This isn't about the environment. This is about contracts. So yeah, it's a silly technology, if you can even call it technology. It's a silly notion. It's nonsensical. It's alchemy, right? It's people who are convinced that you can turn lead into gold if you just get the right formulation. It's just pure nonsense. It really is.
For years, Biden's outgoing climate czar, the Alito bigot John Kerry, has been flying all around the world, pissing away taxpayer money, your money, all the while secretly coordinating with shadowy eco-activist groups.
Now one energy watchdog group is suing the Biden administration to uncover more details about exactly who's on staff, what are the goals, and who they've been partnering with to push Biden's radical climate agenda.
Joining us now, the man behind the lawsuit, Power the Future founder and executive director, Daniel Turner. Daniel, always great to see you. Pardon me, I'm going to ask them to put the sound up because my IFB is busted and I can't hear boo. Daniel, tell us what you're looking to get out of this lawsuit, and will it be easier to dig up dirt now that he's not in an official capacity in the White House?
This is going to be challenging, and trust me, litigation is not my preferred course. This is going to be expensive and time-consuming, and we need support to get this done. But we don't have any other options. We have all the American people have been the victims of 3 years of Biden's green agenda, and we see it in our food prices, our utility bills, in groceries, etc. And a lot of these are part of a global effort to join climate accords that are set by John Kerry. John Kerry's a public servant. And all we are asking is, as a public servant under the Freedom of Information Act, you have to be transparent. Who was on your staff? What is your budget? Who are you meeting with? And up till now, John Kerry has said, I'm not telling you. And that's not a good enough answer, so that's why we have to sue.
And how many flights are you taking? What's your own carbon emissions as you fly around the world to these climate conferences, spewing CO2 that you say you're trying to, stop the emission of? I wonder, why won't they actually just disclose it? They should be proud to tell us all, who's on the staff and what they're actually doing. Why won't they just tell you without lawsuit?
Yeah, of course. They're not going to tell you because they know the American people would be vehemently opposed. They don't want to tell you who they're coordinating with. They don't want to tell you what outside shadowy groups they're talking to. And so they hold it secret. If this was so good, if this were so beneficial to world health and world survival, because they tell us we are in an existential threat, then why the need for secrecy? Why the need to hide all this information? Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And so clearly John Kerry is smart enough to know, holy cow, if the American people knew what I was doing, they would be royally pissed. And so that is why he has to keep it secret.
But the cows are already out of the barn in terms of the hundreds of billions of dollars in just subsidies for green energy, electric vehicles that indirectly goes right to China. Meantime, China gets to mine a record amount of coal and construct a record number of coal-fired power plants. So they get the cheap, polluting energy while sucking up borrowed money from the United States. So that's irreversible, is it not?
I don't think it's irreversible. No, I think America can come back if we're able to have a president who supports our energy industry. And we have a tremendous amount of oil, gas, and coal reserves, and we use all of these fossil fuels in a responsible way. We should want to use those fossil fuels here. But instead, thanks to people like John Kerry, we are shuttering our American industry and we're moving it overseas. And I don't understand why in John Kerry's eyes that's green. Why in Joe Biden's eyes is it good to buy gas or oil from Venezuela or Saudi Arabia? Why can China open a coal plant a week, but we tell West Virginia coal miners that they have to now go on welfare? So this is all part of John Kerry's agenda. He will not tell us the full details, and so we have to sue him to find out more.
Daniel, you make a good point. He doesn't want to tell us because, to your point, he knows that the American people will absolutely 100% disagree with the vision that he has for America. Daniel Turner, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Speaking of which, Daniel, I think we've all seen the videos of, Antarctica and Alaska and so on. And, we've heard Al Gore talk about the melting ice caps. We've seen the polar bears floating away on glaciers, and we know it's all our fault. So I want to ask you, are the polar caps really melting? Is it going away and is it going to flood all of us? Is this really happening?
I was in Anchorage about a week and a half ago, and it was negative 26. They've had their coldest January and February on record, their snowiest on record also. And of course, they will blame that on climate change. So that's the joys of the climate agenda. If you get more snow than average, it's climate change. If you get less snow than average, it's climate change. California's been in a drought for 10 years. It was climate change. Now California's in a rainy season. It's climate change. So when your answer is climate change, then any evidence that you present will go towards that. So no, the Arctic is fine. No predictions of doomsday apocalypse have ever come true, but yet they keep making them year after year. The countdown clock is always ticking because there are hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, and that's really all the green movement is about. It's about another kind of green.
Well, explain that to me, because there's a weird business tied in with this. What is the business that depends on this type of, what I would say falsified data?
Yeah, well, it's the anti-fossil fuel business, which is wind, solar, batteries, EVs. The answer is we can't use fossil fuels. We have to go to this new technology that is going to save us from climate change. And it would be interesting to know who's invested in those technologies and what is their relationship with the agenda that they're setting, right? If we're going to spend hundreds of billions of dollars to build wind and solar, someone's making a lot of money. It's just inevitable. The fact that these things are made in communist China with slave and child labor practices, the fact that they're also made from fossil fuels, which is kind of the biggest joke, right? We're not using fewer fossil fuels, we're just using them differently at the front end. So there's a lot to investigate here. Some of the richest people in the nation, in the world, are heavily invested in overseas minerals and rare earths and wind and solar companies, and they're the first to tell you we need to get off of fossil fuels. Well, yeah, you've got a vested interest in this race, so it's not once you hide behind I'm just trying to save the planet, then you can have really shady practices. You can have a lot of crony capitalism. You can have a lot of bad agendas because you just hide behind the fact that I'm just trying to save us from climate change.
Yeah, I came across something interesting recently, and I had to look into it because it sounded too crazy to be real, to be honest. It's these carbon capture facilities, and when you hear they want to suck carbon out of the air and convert it into like rock and inject it into the groundwater, I had trouble believing it at first, but I looked into it, and they're doing it. In fact, they have two facilities going up right now in the U.S., one in Arizona and one in Texas, that'll be among the largest in the world. They have some operating already in Iceland. My first thought was, if you're sucking carbon out of the atmosphere, what is going to happen? What happens to the atmosphere?
Yeah.
Do you have any understanding what that's going to do to us? Because I thought we kind of needed it,
It's amazing how carbon has become this taboo. Carbon is a pejorative. It's such a small trace amount of air, right? Almost 80% of air is nitrogen. The rest is oxygen. Carbon and carbon dioxide are 0.04%. But somehow this 0.04% is what's killing the polar bears, right? It's what's killing the planet. So it's such a trace amount to begin with. But again, this is why there had to be so much money spent in the Inflation Reduction Act on going green, because you can easily buy off politicians to build these carbon capture facilities. And everyone is on board. Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, left, right. Everyone thinks carbon capture is the wave of the future because there's so much money coming out of DC to build these carbon capture things. There's international money, countries that are much more in the green agenda than the United States, European countries, Japan. They're looking for people to capture their carbon and trying to find contracts of people who will capture their carbon and stick it in their ground. So there's so much money to be made that the fact that you ask these very honest questions, does it work? What's going to be the result? No one even cares about that stuff, Joshua. This isn't about working. This isn't about the environment. This is about contracts. So yeah, it's a silly technology, if you can even call it technology. It's a silly notion. It's nonsensical. It's alchemy. right? It's people who are convinced that you can turn lead into gold if you just get the right formulation. It's just pure nonsense. It really is.
And the Lord God said, Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever.